I'm going to talk today about a project that we started up. It's still kind of a, I guess you call it a skunk works project. It's not official, but it's very important and we're very excited about it. So it's called RaveJS, and kind of surreptitiously or serendipitously, it's kind of a lot like Spring Boot, at least in concept. So who am I? My name's Hann. I go as Unscriptable online. Started calling myself JavaScript Barbarian just because I wanted to do something different. But really the important parts about me, at least for this presentation today, is I've actually been working with JavaScript since '96. That's almost the beginning, not quite. So Crockford's got me beat, Brendan Ike's got me beat, but really started enjoying it a lot from the beginning, not because it's an awesome language, as we all know it's got its flaws, but because it was such a challenge. And so that was, that's what really got me, is that the challenge of JavaScript, or doing stuff in basically a crippled environment. So, it was so much so that I was embedded in JavaScript that in 2005, I basically fired my whole staff. I actually sold off my company, to be honest, and decided to do JavaScript full time. And the reason I got rid of them is because I was the only one in the company that believed JavaScript was going to go anywhere. So as of 2005, that's all I've been doing is JavaScript and almost nothing else. So in 2010, co-founded a project called Cujo.js with Brian Cavalier. The purpose of Cujo.js is it's a JavaScript architectural toolkit. Brian and I both come from strong software engineering backgrounds, and in the JavaScript world, we felt a serious lack of any kind of decent tools to build good architectures. So that's how that project got started. Cujo.js is still going strong, but as of 2012, I got kind of hired into the Spring team, kind of backdoor kind of way, but I'm very glad to be part of it now. So let's start at the beginning. In the good old days, doing client-side development was pretty easy. You just had a script tag, wrote a little bit of code. But today the situation is pretty different. It's actually quite complicated. And this right here was something that, it's a statement that I kept hearing over and over, and I resisted it a lot. I was like, no, this can't be true. JavaScript does not need a build step. But I had been lying to myself because I had already been using AMD for several years before this was a common mantra in the JavaScript community. And in general, it's just true in general, because JavaScript has grown up. It's not for script kiddies. You don't just throw jQuery on a page and start writing. We've gone way past that. We're doing things like differential synchronization. I highly recommend that you see this presentation tomorrow by Brian Cavalier about differential synchronization. The algebra behind this stuff is pretty awesome stuff. Luckily, it's been abstracted and simplified, and the stuff Brian's going to show you is actually going to look really easy to do. But behind the scenes, it's very sophisticated stuff. Of course, we're doing MVVV, WTF, MVC, everything out there. We've been working with AOP, dependency injection and version of control. We do modules, web components. We've got all these transpiled languages on the front end now. And of course, with all this stuff, we needed to do testing and continuous integration. So, of course, with all this new sophistication we have, we've got more complexity. Now we need package managers to install these thousands of JavaScript packages that are out there. We spend a lot of our efforts on bundling and concatenation, minification. Of course, that requires all these file watchers and transpilers. And then, on top of all that, we've got to spend a considerable amount of time working on tests and continuous integration. And just browser testing as well. So this is kind of a trap, the more sophistication we get, the more complexity in our applications, and this is just the front end side I'm talking about. Then we have more machinery and more configuration, and ends up being just more maintenance. I actually gave this presentation at JSConf about 6 months ago. And after the talk, a guy came up to me and he said, "Oh my God, John, everything you're saying is exactly what we're experiencing. We've only got 3 web applications, but we had to hire a full-time guy just to maintain them, to keep up with all the, the new releases and all the configuration we need to do and all the build steps that are needed. And he said, something needs to get done about this. So I'm going to pick on the Spring XD guys. I'm going to show you an example of their configuration that they have. And I'm not picking on them because they've done anything wrong. In fact, they've done everything according to current best practices. And this is what came out of it. Their grunt file, if you're not familiar with grunt, it's a task runner for JavaScript. Their grunt file is 400 lines. It was actually 500 lines of code until Brian and I hammered them and said, you guys have to stop working with global scripts and start using modules. And when they did that, they pulled 100 lines out of the grunt file, but then they created this 60 to 70 line AMD configuration file. So they just kind of traded one for the other, which was really disappointing. And then their testing configuration, they've actually got over 100 lines of code just to configure their test setup. So, just to kind of give you a visualization of what this looked like, this was the grunt file. This is the require.js's AMD configuration. And this was one of their karma.config files. They actually had a couple of them. And again, these guys are doing everything right, and this is what they have, and this has to be maintained. And the way that this was put together is basically someone was out there researching, found that, okay, we need to use this tool over here to minify our HTML, and oh, I went and found this grunt plugin to do that, and I got to copy this and paste this code in. And so it kind of came together in this haphazard manner, but now they got to own this code, and they got to maintain it. So, this is a mess, and somebody's got to clean it up. So, can we do it? And yes, we have to do it. I mean, this is the biggest problem I see right now in JavaScript development. Because, some of my teammates say this really well, is it's getting in the way of innovation and progress in general, because it's too much work now. It's too much work to do things the right way. So it's not just applications. If you want to prototype something really quickly, you want to do a quick experiment, you need to set up all these steps just to get to a state where you can start writing code. And I hear this excuse from everybody on the Spring team. John, can you review my code? Sorry, I didn't use promises. I used callbacks because that was too much work to install when.js. So how do we fix it? So option one, code generation. There's projects out there now in the JavaScript world. Yeoman is probably the biggest one that I know of right now. To generate code. And basically what it does is you generate a grunt config or a gulp config and or an AMD config or any other config. And you generate, actually you generate a lot of things, including your HTML files and stuff like that. And that's all cool, but it's the configuration I really want to concentrate on here. So what's nice about that is lots of people out there have created all these recipes to generate certain things, and there's some decent ones out there. I hear JHipster is pretty cool. But the cons are, once you need to customize that, you own the code. It's yours now. There's often flexibility built into some of these things out there, but not always. And it still requires a lot of machinery. All this stuff does is do all those tasks to set up this complicated machinery. And that's one of the other problems is now you've got all these moving parts. Not only do you have to configure and maintain stuff, but you got a lot of moving parts. And you really haven't solved the maintenance problem. You've just solved the startup problem. There's still ongoing maintenance. So another option is to be like Spring Boot. So we were kind of on this path already, like I said, before we discovered we were doing things that are very Spring Boot-like. But now, once we discovered we're doing things very Spring Boot-like, we're like, what else is in Spring Boot that we can take advantage of? So one of the, I got this, started browsing the Spring Boot documentation to say, okay, what is it that Spring Boot does for us? And one of the things it does is provides a default runnable configuration. You have Spring Boot local, you've got something that will run. So you start right away with something that's runnable. You don't have to do all these steps just to get a runnable application. And then you detect when things are installed. In the JavaScript world, we don't have the class path, so we need some other way to do that, but we can do it. And then auto-configure based off what you detect in the environment. So what's nice about this? No configuration. You can get up and started without doing anything, and there's a lot less machinery. And in the end, it ends up being a lot less maintenance as well. But what's the downside here? You have to follow certain conventions. That's the trade-off, configuration versus convention. And there are some heuristics and logic and dependencies that you just kind of have to know about. You have to know how Spring Boot works. But you know, it's fairly intuitive, I think, to the way Spring Boot works, so that's not that bad. But you still have to know about this stuff. So how do we create the perfect world? And the perfect world would be, I think, to reduce these cons of this convention over configuration and this auto configuration. So minimize the number of conventions you have to follow, and then document, you know, these hidden things, these things that you have to know. And I think between these two things, we can minimize the cons and end up with something that's really great. That's my hypothesis, anyways. So that's where RaveJS is headed. So it's kind of Spring Boot-ish. If you're expecting to see Spring Boot written in JavaScript, you're not going to find it, of course. But I think you'll also recognize that some of the benefits are here in Rave. All right. So quickly, I think everybody here. How many people are familiar with Spring Boot? Okay, great. That's awesome. Okay, so let's go over these real fast. So I get this right off of the website. Spring Boot makes it easy to create standalone, production-grade, Spring-based applications that you can just run. So this seems like a great way to start out with a JavaScript environment. So just quickly, what are the features? Of course, you can create Spring applications standalone. They don't rely on anything because they have a built-in runtime environment, you know, Tomcat or Jetty. Provide some opinionated starter configuration and metadata. Automatically configures Spring. Provides some production-ready features already built in. No code generation and no XML unless you want to. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to spin this a little bit to be JavaScript. And I say JavaScript / HTML5 because mobile hybrid apps, it's the same thing. You know, what we're developing here doesn't matter if it's a desktop app, a mobile app, or whatever. So we want to create these apps as standalone. You know, that seems to be the trend. Is develop your application as if it didn't have a back end, and mobile first also kind of lends itself to that kind of mentality. Provide a runtime environment. If you don't have one already. Provide some opinionated starter projects to get people up and running quickly. Automatically configure everything, not just the JavaScript, not just Rave, not just, you know, auto-configure everything that you might need for the project. Provide some production-ready features, of course, no code generation. Of course, we don't ever want to touch XML in JavaScript, so at least all the JavaScript developers I know. Okay. But of course, at the same time, in the JavaScript world, our concerns are very different. So again, you're not going to see Spring Boot written in JavaScript. Some of our biggest concerns are code size, of course, page load speed. We've got way different development workflows than you have on the Java side. Very important limitation here is that browsers can't scan the file system. We need to find other ways in order to discover things. And of course, as many possible server environments. And that's why we want to, you know, that's why the mentality of JavaScript being a separate application from the server is very important for us. You know, you don't need to necessarily have that same mentality, but if we have that mentality, we allow Rave to work with as many environments as possible. So quickly, just some goals. Of course, we want to create these applications. We want zero configuration at least 90% of the time. And I do believe that we're headed in that direction, and we're going to achieve near 100% zero config. Reduce or eliminate the machinery whenever possible. Integrate with all the popular third-party packages. This is critical right here. I mean, we're not going to write something that just works with Spring or just works with Cujo. I was a big fan of the Dojo toolkit for the longest time, and this is the mistake they made, is they made everything too integrated. You know, we're not going to make that mistake, and we're going to make sure that the stuff we write integrates with everything. And of course, embrace the future. EcmaScript 6 is right around the corner, so they say. I actually do believe it's coming. It's not gonna get shelved like EcmaScript 4 and whatever happened to 5. But at the same time, we want to be grounded in the JavaScript that we're using today, of course. So you need something that works today because, you know, ES6 is still probably a year away. So quickly creating HTML5 apps. How are we going to do that? We're going to emphasize architecture, not global script kiddie stuff, no globals, script tags. We're going to emphasize good architectural practices, modules, web components, right out of the bat. Provide a runtime environment and provide some opinionated starter projects, and I'll show you those in a minute. Zero configuration, of course, basic runnable setup out of the box, just like you get with Spring Boot. And we're going to use metadata and heuristics to auto-configure. Now, there's going to be a couple of conventions that need to happen in order to make this work because we can't scan the file system. So you start out with a starter project, and then if you use the JavaScript package managers the way they're designed, and anybody who's used them, how many people have used NPM or Bower in here? Okay, so you're already familiar with how that works. As long as you're using those in the way that they're prescribed to be used, you're providing enough metadata for a process to figure out with the environment. But of course, that's not nearly enough, so we're adding these third-party extensions to give Rave additional metadata, additional heuristics, and logic. And this provides a very powerful infrastructure to do some things that we'll see. So very, very critical to me. I come from the AMD world, and one of the mantras of the AMD world is that, JavaScript doesn't need a build step. We're lying to ourselves, of course, but at least in development mode, you don't need a build step. F5 is your build step. Basically just reload the browser. And that's very important. It's very important that you've got that easy, really fast startup experience, and to be able to return to that experience at any point in time. So that's important as well, is that we have this mode where Rave will let you run without all this complex machinery. Also important, of course, not just supporting Bower and NPM, but supporting all the common module systems that are around today. These obviously aren't the official sanctioned module systems by EcmaScript, but they're in such wide use that, of course, we have to use them. And I'm talking about AMD and I'm talking about Node, and including the AMD plugin syntax, which was kind of a bear to implement, but it's in there now. And so including not just being able to use the plugins, but able to use the syntax like you're used to. So you can migrate, this helps you migrate your existing code base over. And of course, also, any of your legacy global stuff, we'll work with it too. So I really like the new ES6 module syntax. If you haven't seen it, it is kind of nice. It's very convenient, but unfortunately it's not compatible with any browsers today. As soon as you write something in ES6 module syntax, you can't load it in any browser today. You can't load it in Node. So there's an ES6 loader. When the loader is very different from the syntax, the loader itself was designed to also work in an ES5 environment, unlike the syntax, which cannot work in an ES6 environment. The loader itself, Rave supplies a polyfill so that you can actually start using an ES6 loader today, and then when the browsers start implementing, the native browser's loader will take over. So you can actually start using the next generation loader now. We're actually working on the ability for you to use the ES6 module syntax. Even though the browser will choke on it, we can transpile it on the fly inside the browser. And that's actually pretty close to working now. Full ES6 syntax is a little bit trickier because it requires a lot more transpilation, and it's kind of heavy and slow. But we're working on that too, and we expect to have that running. But again, it comes down to, in order to start embracing the future and writing to the future now, you don't need any build steps, file watchers, or other machinery. And of course, your existing legacy code, like I said, the ES6 module loader is designed to run legacy code, AMD, Node, well into the future. And so we've actually written all the code for you to leverage all your existing AMD and Node modules into an ES6 environment. And that's all baked right into RaveJS. So just quickly, any environment that can serve static files is a suitable runtime environment for Rave, and we'll provide one in our starters. Okay, so let's take a look at what it's like to start using Rave. So if I wanted to create a Rave project from scratch, one thing I would need is an index.html file. You need this for any web application. Actually, this could be anything served out of Spring or whatever. It could be served, served from a template or whatever. But I'm just talking about the simplest case here, just some sort of HTML file. And in order to bootstrap an application, we're just going to have some sort of bootstrap JavaScript file. We need just at least one JavaScript file in order to bootstrap our application. So that's what I've done here. So a 2-line HTML file is all we need. Set the doc type to keep it out of quirks mode, and then just boot something with a JavaScript file. And that boot script can be really tiny, and the ones that we provide are really just enough to just start up Rave. We need at least one package metadata file, something from Bower or NPM, and the easy way to generate one of these is to run Bower init or NPM init, and this will generate the metadata file for you. And then in that metadata file, you need to reference a main.js. And this is the main entry point into your application. So this is all it takes in order to create a Rave project from scratch. But that's too much work right there, isn't it? I mean, you got to go create an HTML file, you got to create metadata file, and you have to go create some main.js. This is just we shouldn't even have to do that. So that's why we created Rave Starters. So let's take a quick peek at Rave Starters. And of course, the Rave Starter just includes all these things. So we include an index.html, which you can use or not use. We include a bootstrap file, which basically just initializes and starts up Rave. It includes some bower.json and package.json files in there already, and a main.js, and any other files that are needed for the particular opinionated starter that you're using. And we also include a static web server if we need. And we'll take a look at this. And again, this is only needed if you don't already have a web server in your environment. Okay, so here's an example of the steps needed. So just go clone this repository called Rave Start. That's our minimal one. CD into the application, type Bower install, npm install, and then npm run start, and you've got a runnable application at this point. So that's all it takes to get started now. So we got a few Rave starters out there already. We expect to have a ton of them. Sorry, yes, Chris. Do we need to have? The question is, do we need to have both Bower and npm? The Rave starters that are out there right now, yes. Except for one. It's possible to run this one without Bower. And I expect there'll be some of them out there that favor npm because Bower is kind of a mess still. There's still a lot of broken repositories out in Bower land. But what's your concern, Chris?
Well, why do I need two things that do the same thing?
Oh, good question. Why do we need two things that do the same thing? And the answer is that Bower is designed mainly to satisfy the needs of the browser world, and npm was designed primarily to serve the needs of the node environment. The thing is that now people are putting a lot of browserish things on npm, right? So now we've got these two competing package managers that have some things are on npm and some things are on Bower. So what's nice about Rave is you can actually intermingle the two and not run into conflicts. So our minimally opinionated starter, like I said, is Rave Start. It's just shows you basically it gives you this very minimal HTML file, very minimal main.js, gives you an npm, a package.json for npm and a bower.json for Bower. We have some specialized starters now. There's one for AngularJS, and it starts up a minimal Angular environment, including some controllers and a router. There's a Cujo.js starter started by Fabrice Matrat in the audience today. And we're actually working on some Spring Boot and even some other starters out there for React and other things. Okay, so once you start it up, what's the next step? Develop your app. So what's that look like? Again, if you used Bower or NPM, this should look familiar. You just install packages. So let's say you want to use rest.js. So rest.js is available on Bower and NPM. So I'm just going to type in Bower install --save rest. Now the --save is critically important, and it's a little bit frustrating that NPM and Bower decided not to make save the default. But this is a critical step because you need to save this metadata. You need to save the metadata that says that you're using this application. There is a way in Bower and NPM to make this the default, but I'm gonna show you in all of the examples that we use --save to just ensure that this metadata is saved. And so that's really the biggest convention that you need to do in order to use Rave, is to remember to type --save. So again, I'm just showing other examples. There are lots of packages out there. There's Angular as a package is on Bower. It's also on NPM, so NPM also is the home of lots of, like I said, Topcoat Button is a CSS library that I was surprised to find on NPM. A year ago, you wouldn't have found it on NPM, that's for sure. Okay. So once you've installed the runtime environment, if you reload your browser, Rave will kick in and it will, thank you. It will auto-detect what module formats each of these packages use. If one of them uses AMD, another one uses Node, another one uses globals, it doesn't matter. Rave will auto-detect all of them and configure the ES6 module loader correctly. It will also detect, like I said, NPM packages tend to favor Node environments. But people have gotten around that by specifying this browser field within the metadata. Rave will look for that, and this browser field actually instructs tools like Rave and Browserify how to substitute certain modules and certain pieces to allow this node code to otherwise run in the browser. So we detect that. We find all the main entry points, not only of your application, but also all the packages. And like I said, that auto configures an ES6 module loader automatically for you. So zero configuration, just by following these conventions, you can automatically just start installing packages as you like, and then just start coding against them with zero additional configuration. But wait, there's more. I should have said one more thing, but I wasn't thinking last night. Rave Extensions. So Rave Extensions are a way to integrate, extend, and customize not just Rave itself, but your application. And the possibilities here are enormous. And this is probably, to me, one of the most exciting parts about Rave. We have the tools to rebuild them. That's all I keep thinking when I see that cat. Okay, so here's just some examples. Here's an example of a Rave Extensions where you can actually add some integration middleware. And this one actually exists. Rave Angular exists out there, and it does a little bit of work to allow you to write Angular modules. Angular modules aren't modules in the way that I'm accustomed to talking about them, because they don't do any dependency management, but it allows you to wrap them in a node formatted module quite easily. So there's actually no work to do. So if you Bower or npm install --save Rave Angular, now you can just start writing Angular modules wrapped in Node, and it'll all just magically just work because of the glue code, the integration code, and the metadata that we provide in Rave Angular. You can install additional module loader capabilities. This one right here, Rave Load Text, allows you to load HTML templates or other text type things into into the browser using the same module syntax that you used to in Node or AMD, and just require template.html, and this automatically just works. Yes, question? How do we know when to use npm install or bower install? It's a very good question. I'm going to get back around to that, but probably the way you would go about doing this is you'll do a search, right? You'll do a search, go search npm and take a look at which packages are out there. Oh, I found Angular on npm and I found it on Bower. Which one do I want to use? And you can go look and see, what repositories they point to and whatnot. And in terms of Rave extensions, all the ones that we're writing are available on both, so it doesn't matter. And we're encouraging all of the extension writers to publish to both places as well. So it shouldn't matter for extensions. But I'm going to get back to that because I know there's more to your question, and I will get back to that in a minute. So, and here's just an example of adding additional debugging capabilities. There's a Rave extension out there for the when.js promises library that automatically installs additional debugging information. And then when you're done debugging, well, there's a way when you go to production, it'll strip debugging anyways. But what's really nice about these things, you install them, you're done working with them, you decide you're going to work with something out, you should just uninstall. There's nothing to unconfigure because you didn't have to configure anything to use them. You don't have to do anything to unconfigure them to stop using them. This isn't ready yet, but this is probably, again, one of the most exciting parts about Rave is when we have Rave auto-configuring your build, deploy, and test environments. So removing that configuration is going to be the biggest win for me. I think for the JavaScript community is what I should say. So just an example here, there'll be a Rave extension that allows you to say, I don't want to bundle my JavaScript together. I want to use Speedy. I want to use Speedy 4 to serve files just in time. And so the Rave build Speedy will set up the environment so that when you go to production, it actually plans to open up an HTTP2 connection and just stream modules instead of bundles. And here's just an example. My favorite test tool is Buster, so I can't wait to write a Rave extension to automate or auto-configure my Buster tests. And here's just another example. These things don't exist yet, but these are just things that I have in my dreams about building some other extensions to use require.js. Let's say you really, really love AMD module bundles and you want to bundle up your applications in AMD. That's fine. Building a build require.js extension is actually going to be quite easy. And of course, we have big plans for integrating with Spring. So if you want to take a look what's out there right now, there's actually quite a few extensions at the moment. Let's see what Rave extensions we have. So I just did a quick search for the magic keyword is Rave-extension on Bower. So there's quite a few out there already. Some that allow you to work with AMD plugins, some that allow you to work with things without using an AMD plugin. And let's see, just quickly click on NPM. And again, a lot more available on NPM. And there's quite a lot of overlap on these lists. So let's see, yeah. So I know everybody's getting bored. You want to see some code. At least I want to see some code. So let's build an application. Okay, so I'm going to switch over. I'm going to try to switch over. Let's see, to a terminal. Okay. All right, so this is also a very good time to ask questions because I'm going to be doing some time, spending some time typing and whatnot. So I'm going to show you guys. Yes?
You mentioned Rave extensions.
Yeah.
They seem to be all pretty much wrappers, that really wrap the underlying library. Is that a hard dependency? So if I wanted to use Bootstrap, I don't have a Rave wrapper of Bootstrap. Is that a hard requirement, or is that actually?
Okay. So, right. So the question is, Rave extensions, a lot of them seem to be wrappers. And that's true. It's usually they're wrappers and a little bit of extra logic or a little bit of extra metadata. A lot of them out there, that's what they are, because there's just a little bit of tweaking that was needed. But no, that's not the requirement. If you want to use Bootstrap, for instance, just install Bootstrap. And you don't need extensions for just about anything, actually. There's very few out there that actually need it, but the extensions out there usually provide just a little bit of extra, added functionality. Like the Angular one provides the ability to run Angular inside node formatted modules, for instance, right? And when it comes to testing, I imagine that the Rave Angular stuff that's going to grow. So Karma integration and stuff, So I imagine they're going to grow, but a lot of them are small right now too because the build part of Rave isn't fully developed yet. So okay, so let's see. I'm going to show you an application called Circles. Okay. And I'm going to do a lot of cutting and pasting here. So I am grabbing a Rave Starter, just the simple one called Rave Start. And I'm just using curl to pull it down. So where did it go to? Yes. Okay. Okay. All right, so it just pulled down those files I talked about before. We've got an index.html. We've got a boot.js, which I'll show you in a second, bower.json, package.json, and a main.js file. So this is what the Rave Starter gave us. So I'm going to run npm install. And did it install? It installed serve. Serve is a very minimal static file web server written by Scott Andrews. So I know many in the audience know who Scott is. Sorry. And then I'm just going to run bower install. And so npm install and bower install, when you don't have any parameters on the back, just means install the things that are already in package.json and bower.json. So you can see here that there's one dependency in bower.json, and that's just Rave. So again, this is extremely minimal starter. Bang. Okay, Rave's installed. Okay. I see this starter installed Rave 021. I don't want to use Rave 021, so what can I do? I am going to uninstall it, and I'm going to install the latest and greatest. So this is standard Bower syntax to install a certain version. It's similar but not identical to the npm syntax, but I just instructed Bower to install Rave 031. And let's actually take a look at some code so you guys can see what's going on here. All right, I'm going to try to get this all on screen. This is going to be fun. All right. Can you guys see all that? How's that look? Really tiny. All right. How's the font size on that? Is that good? All right, great. Okay, so let's see. This is not, let's do this. All right. All right, what my editor is seeing and what's on the file system are definitely two different things here. All right, so let's try this again. Okay. All right, so we've got a bower.json, we've got a package.json. And so, again, one of the big differences is that one of the reasons we have both an npm package.json and a bower.json is because we're running the node type things, and we have to use npm to install the node type things because package.json doesn't have really anything in terms of server-side stuff. So in order to run our server, we need to use package.json. All right, so we see here that some stuff got installed in node modules, as you'd expect. Serve was there, and Rave is here as well. Okay, so I know I'm going to write this application, and I'm going to be using something called most.js. Most is monadic streams. I'm going to do some cool stuff with most. So I'm going to bower install -- save most. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, yes, thank you. It's not a real dash. Thanks, Chris. Okay, cool. All right, so we can see that most also installed when.js. If we take a look in here, we can see that, yes, we have most and Rave and when installed. And our dependencies, wow. Bower, you're really disappointing me. All right, Bower. Of course, it wouldn't be a perfect demo unless something went wrong. So Bower's doing some interesting things. For some reason, it removed Rave, so I just put it back in for it. There we go. Okay, so I know I'm going to use most, and I also know that I'm going to, I'm not going to do some live coding in front of you. I'm just going to copy and paste some code here. All right. And I'm going to copy and paste this right over here. Actually, let me prove to you that we've got a runnable environment. Let's do that first. All right. All right, yeah. So we have a runnable environment here. The main right now, it just says hello from the main module. And that is live. Can you guys see that? There we go. Okay, so let's do something more interesting. Let's take this code. This is one of the demo projects out of the most.js repository. Okay, and so this code right here just does a require most. This is using node syntax, and it also requires something called circles.css. So this is one of the really fun things about ES6 module loaders, is that you can just start loading other things besides JavaScript. You could actually require CoffeeScript or Dart or something like that. As long as there's an on-the-fly transpiler written in JavaScript, you can load those things as well. So let's just see what happens if I do this. I know it's going to bust. Of course, it's going to bust. It can't work. Okay. So, but Rave gives us some information here. It says that it couldn't find. I don't know if you can read that, but it says circle.css.js. It says Rave doesn't know that we actually wanted to load a CSS file. It just thought there was some module named circle.css. So let's quickly go install some new functionality to Rave to load CSS files. And this is basically how easy it is. It's just, I'm sorry, what's it? You're right. Yep. Yeah, thank you, Apple. There we go. Okay, so, oh, this is interesting. Okay, so that extension uses Rave. This is a standard Bower thing. It uses Rave 0.2, but I want to use Rave 0.3, so I'm going to say no, just use it Rave 0.3. I know it's going to work, so. All right, so I've installed Rave Load CSS. Come back here, and I know it's still not going to work because there still is no CSS file. So it's still not going to work, but it's actually looking for the right thing now. I don't know if you can see that. It says it's just trying to load circle.css now. So let's create a circle.css. All right, so I had this one ready. Let's create a new file here. Oops. Yep, I saw it. Pretend I'm doing the live coding. I just typed this real fast off the top of my head. All right, and see what happens if I remember to start up the server again. I should just leave it running in other windows, what I should do. Yeah, you're right. Well, that's good, that's good. I'll leave it running now. Okay. All right, reload. Yep. Ah, there's one more thing I forgot to do. And that's easy. And that is that the code was looking for some HTML. Add that real fast. And we'll have demo. All right. All right, so now we have our demo, and this is a pretty cool demo. Yeah, that's really pretty. Okay, so anyways, I have to really try hard to stop playing with this thing. But okay, all right, so what happened here? Okay, so let's take a look at the network tab. Network tab says we loaded a lot of stuff here. So this is responsive mode. This is unbuilt mode. This is the mode that is a lot easier to use during development. All the files are brought in individually. They're very easy to debug. You find the right code you want really fast. But of course, this is not what you'd want in production. So you know, when you go to production, you'll build your code first. So we can see all the code coming here. The other thing that was interesting, you probably noticed that Rave, we actually put Rave into debug mode, and I'll show you the easiest way to do that is in the HTML file here, and that is just by including this HTML data attribute called data debug here, and that actually tells Rave that you want to do additional debugging. If I get rid of it and we reload, you see that nothing appears in the console and everything looks really cool. This is what you want in production, but in development we definitely want this extra information. And actually we get a little bit of extra information here that we can start querying Rave for certain information. Like for instance here, I'm going to see what kind of packages it installed in what version. So I can see all that information. I can see all the stuff that Rave had figured out on its own. We can see that it loaded the 0.4.1 of the Rave load CSS file. We can see that it recognized that it was a node module type in there. So we can get all this information out of Rave, really useful information. All right, so that's the most fun demo I'm going to have today, but I'm going to have definitely some other demos. Let's see. Stop playing. Okay. All right. Okay, so this next demo, I'm going to preview an application called Scores that you're going to see in more detail tomorrow. But I just want to show you this. It's actually a Spring application. All right, I'm already there. And this application was written for Rave already. I just want to make sure that it's no longer a Rave application. So, all right. So I'm going to start this from scratch. The code already exists. I'm not going to start it with a starter. I'm going to use the from scratch procedure. I'm going to run bower init. The name is scores. Version 0, it's fine. Description, I'm just taking all of the defaults, except for I'm going to give it a main.js. I'm going to let it auto-guess the module type. Scriptable license, homepage. Whatever. All right, looks good? Yes, I like that. Okay. All right, so this actually generated a bower.json file for me. Let's see, and I am going to now write a little bit of code. Let's see, actually I am going to do boot run just to prove, let's see. All right, let's do that. All right, let's see. Sorry, just resizing my screen to get it to something you guys can see. All right, so we've got a main.js already here and a main.css. Pretend I just wrote those real fast. Okay, so you can see that this requires a project called Fabulous, one called GIF, Stomp WebSockets, and then sock.js client. Okay, so we're doing some WebSockety things here, obviously. And okay, so let's go install these things here. So bower install, save, and this is actually in a special location. So notice I'm installing something that's on Git, actually, is what I'm doing here. It doesn't even have to be in the npm or bower repositories. Let's see. Install Rave, doesn't matter what order I install these. Yes, of course, it doesn't know what that is. Okay. Now, I did actually, the person who wrote this, Brian, did some research into all the different WebSocket libraries out there and picked Stomp WebSocket. Should probably show that. So if we do a bower search WebSocket, you can see there's a bunch of them out there. All right, but anyways, Brian did his research and decided to install one called Bower Sock.js client, but we also did a little renaming trickery here, and we called it just Sock.js client. Somewhere in there, GIF was installed automatically in that process when we installed Fabulous, actually. Yes, okay. Excellent. All right. All right, I'm going to skip over to the root directory here, and I am actually going to run the server. And again, I know this isn't going to work. Again, this is because of some of the packages out in Bower are a little bit busted. But I just want to show you again that Rave will give you all the information you need in order to figure out what the problems are. Okay. Starting up Spring Boot. All right. Let's see what happened in the console. All right. So It's common to see these package.json and bower.json files missing. This is part of Rave's process during development to discover the environment, and some packages out there don't actually have package.jsons or bower.jsons installed. But okay, so here's the interesting thing, stomp.min.js. Okay, so it turns out that the stomp metadata itself does not actually point at a main.js. So I'm going to show you how to override the information on behalf of these broken packages. So I'm going to. So this is documented. Rave has this ability to override busted packages. And this is going to be the only configuration we have to do for this project. Okay, so what I've told Rave to do is to override stomp WebSocket and provide the correct main.js file, and override sock.js client and give it the correct module type. And bang. Okay, yep, scoreboard's working. All right. Can't really see it doing anything, but I can see some activity down here at the bottom. These scores should be updating, but they are updating. I just can't seem to see them all on the screen. We could see some activity happening in here. And this is actually live because Spring Boot's live reload. So if I were to change something in here, let's see. Yeah, I'm going to do it the easy way. Just going to do console.log. Hello, I am live. Reload, and we should see that up at the top here. Somewhere. I should have done console.error. Okay. All right, well, trust me, it's live. Okay, I'm going to show you one more project that we were able to convert to Rave, and this is the Spring.io app, Sagan. We'll get that running on Rave, and we're able to do it despite the fact that I was using an old version of the Sagan app and an old version of it was using some old versions of Bootstrap and jQuery, and even though that was the old versions, we were able to get it running. Again, with just a very few lines of configuration. Okay. Okay. All right, so I'm just opening the code for the Sagan client module of the Sagan application. And I'm also going to bring up in a web browser the version of it. All right. So let's see. I keep forgetting you guys can't see this. How's that look? Okay. So before, Sagan has this large gulp file to do. Actually, this is a relatively small gulp file that Sagan uses to build the client side of Sagan. We've got some additional information. We can see right now that Sagan uses 14 different packages, JavaScript packages, but there's all this override stuff in here, and this is also some configuration that Gulp uses as well. So we've got some hidden configuration in the bower.json, and we've got the package.json is just all of the Gulp related tools that are used to build this. And so Brian Clazel had to curate this list over time through trial and error to try and get this working. So in the new version of the code, we have a much reduced bower.json. The overrides that we saw before, now we just have 2 overrides instead of all those overrides for almost all 14 of the packages. Now we just have 2 overrides. This one actually is going away as soon as I rebase off of master. And this one was just because of this bootstrap date time picker package is busted. And I really should go do a PR pull request to the maintainer and tell them how to fix it, because this is really brain dead stuff to fix in that package. So basically they just forgot to specify a main, and they forgot to specify that they have a dependency on bootstrap. So that's it. There's no more gulp file here. There's no more additional configuration. This is all the configuration we'll likely need, even when we do the build. And just checking to see if it runs here. And it does, almost. Oh, this is Firefox. Firefox is confused. Reload a couple of times, and just going to make sure we're on the latest version of most. Okay, reload, and okay. Should I be using an older version, you think? All right, so easy enough to do. 0.2. Okay. This might be Firefox caching at this point. Let's see. Yes, thank you, Chrome. All right, so here it goes. It's running now. Chrome. Yeah. So this is running. Removed all the configuration, and Rave is just figuring out basically the environment and auto-configuring itself. So, all right, so next thing I want to show you is what we're thinking about for the Rave CLI. You can see you can do anything with Rave without a CLI, but adding a CLI could enhance the user experience. But it's very important that we don't force you to rely on the CLI, and the CLI is completely optional. So what can we do with a CLI? We can help coordinate Bower and NPM. For instance, if you want to start searching for a package, you could, if Rave sees that you're using Bower, it can search Bower first and suggest packages. If it doesn't find them on Bower, it could then search NPM. And then if it sees that you don't have a package.json, it could say, hey, do you want a package.json? So you can start pulling in NPM packages. And it can actually do a lot of those tasks of coordinating those two package managers automatically for you. Remove sources of common mistakes. I was lucky during this presentation that I didn't actually forget to type --save because I copied and pasted everything, but I do forget on occasion. So we could have a Rave CLI command that allows you to install. Question? Yes, I can show you that if you want. What happens is it doesn't save the metadata, and so when it counters a require statement for a package that doesn't exist, you'll get an error message, and that error message says right in there, did you forget to type --save? So it actually helps you there. And there's also a command you can type rave.check versions that goes and checks the versions. But I think it would be really nice, and I'll show you on the next slide, to have something that you can run on the command line that just does a double check before you even open up the browser to check that you've remembered to do all those things. So for instance, here's just some ideas, the things in my head that I think we need to add. Rave init to basically start a new project. It basically does the equivalent of downloading a starter package, exploding it, and installing any additional extensions. You already know off the top of your head, you're going to use this starter package, you're going to install these extensions. Just do it all in one command. Rave search to help you figure out, where the, start looking at NPM and Bower to figure out what packages satisfy the things you need. Of course, Rave install and Rave uninstall will do the --save for you to make sure you did the right thing. But the last thing, Rave validate, is something that I think we could use in order to just run it. You just run it, and it actually crawls all of your metadata outside the browser to give you a really fast and easy way to double check that you've done everything correctly. And then Rave build and unbuild to allow you to switch away from a responsive auto-configure environment to a built environment and back again. So again, the benefits, of course, zero configuration, less machinery, less maintenance, but more importantly, a brain-dead simple startup. If we get the Rave init command line going, basically a one-liner to start a new project. What's great is that there's already a huge selection of Bower and NPM packages. You saw Sagan, we're only incompatible with 2 of the 14 Bower packages that were used and 0 of the NPM packages that were used. And again, those are things that we can just issue pull requests to the authors of those packages in order to fix them. So we should have 100% or near 100% compatibility with Bower and NPM very soon. I didn't get to show you this, but because of the Rave extensions, we've got a platform now for integration. We've done experiments with our IOC container and with some other projects we're working on to tap into Rave's context that it builds, because it actually builds a context about your app, and it provides a way for things to reserve namespaces or just to coordinate across your application and auto-discover each other. Actually, there's already something that uses that. The compatibility shim in there for legacy AMD plugins uses that. It uses that central context, and all the AMD plugins register on that central context and give information about, like, for instance, use this CSS plugin for this package over here, or use this CSS plugin for this package over here, and so that all happens automatically behind the scenes. So, and we had this problem 6 months ago when we were writing these getting started guides, or actually nearly a year ago. And that is, we were trying to lead people down the right path to use modules and stuff, but our getting started guides, a good third of them was just getting the environment set up. And Rave would definitely help out with that. Just Bower install a Rave starter, bang, start coding. So what to do today? I kind of intermix some things that are coming, some things that are working today. Rave right now is ready for prototyping, for quick prototyping and experiments, because we're still working on the build part. Like I said, it works with Bower, NPM, ES5 modules, AMD, including plugins, and node syntax, and even legacy scripts. We've got these 3 Rave starters ready to start working with. So we're working on build and deploy patterns. I hope to have those done this fall, so that this fall you'll actually be able to start building production applications. We're working on more starters. We want to get better integration with Spring Boot, React. ES6 module syntax is in the works already. And IE8 compatibility is really just installing a polyfill for IE8 to work with full ES5 syntax. 1.0, which we don't have a date for at the moment, but we'd like to have the CLI in there to remove, to add the conveniences, remove some of the drudgery. And of course have more build and deploy patterns. I'm hoping Speedy 4 is actually not a pipe dream at that point. And of course, more testing patterns, minification, just more. Basically, 1.0 would be something that you'll feel good about building your production apps with. So. And one of the things we're thinking about is having a showcase or directory of curated extensions. Gulp does this right now. They have a curated list because if you've tried to search for grunt things, you really can't evaluate, and the stars on GitHub aren't always a good indication. So it'd be great to have a showcase. I know I'm dreaming about this, but I think that would be just a natural thing to have, to help people find the right things. All right, I've got a bunch of links here. I'll put this slide back up in a second, but now it's time for questions. If anybody else has some questions that I've been saving for the end. Yes, Chris, go for it.
Well, it was nice to show how you get started, like from scratch. What if I already have something and I want to take advantage of this zero configuration? I just want to get rid of.
All right, so the question was, I showed how to start from scratch. But what if we already have a project and we want to migrate it over? And that's a great topic, and it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. Right now, it's kind of trial and error, but I think that's something with the Rave CLI we might be able to do a lot with. Actually, instead of Rave init, maybe it's Rave migrate or something like that. Because when we're on the command line, we've got the ability to do a lot more file scanning and look around and do some auto configuration there on the command line that we can't necessarily do from the browser. So, but I've gone through this a couple times now. When I migrated Sagan, I took some notes. It's like, okay, this didn't work the way I expected to. This didn't work. And then I was doing that with version 0.2, and I actually went into 0.3 and specifically added checks in the debug code in order to check all these conditions to try and give better error messages. So it is possible to do it, but knowing that the main.js is missing, for instance, in stomp WebSocket, right, is still something you still have to have a little bit of knowledge about how Rave works in order to do it. But that's stuff that we're working on and trying to fix. So that doing things like migrations and getting better error messages is
It's not as easy as delete all your configuration and stuff.
So it's not as easy as deleting all your configuration and just start, doing it in it. Yeah, no, but it probably would be just delete the configuration, and I'm hoping that we get to that point. If we're able to achieve zero configuration, then we should be able to, to do it. So, sorry, any other questions? All right, thank you very much. I'll be around, so feel free to bug me at any time. Thank you.